Everybody, Alex Newman. Crazy stuff going on in the economy today, as you probably noticed. And with us, we have a return guest. His name is Travis Bajema, like Bajema Coke, except Coke thinks you need to be less white, so maybe you don't want to buy him a Coke. But we got Travis Bajema with us. He is the economic ninja, and I met him at a conference, and he started talking about financial things and cryptocurrency things, and I was just blown away. I was absolutely floored by how much he knew. So we had to get him on the show. Today we want to talk about silver, what's going on in the silver market, the inflation, and also cryptocurrencies. Now the central banks are taking off the gloves, and they're saying it takes too much energy to mine Bitcoin, and we got drug dealers are using it too apparently. So we're going to get into all this. But Travis, thank you so much for being with us. And why don't you start by telling us what you think is going on in the silver market? You mentioned that you think there's an incredible short squeeze that might even take down the whole market. Wrap us our heads around all this, if you would.
Yeah, to say that a lot is happening all at once is the understatement of the century. I used to think that 2006, I was losing my mind with all the facts that were changing all around the world in the global economy. But now we're just being blown away. So what's going on with silver is this really started with this Wall Street bets movement on Reddit. A lot of people have probably heard about it. They've heard about GameStop and other companies that people, just common people that were on their computer, started talking about and looking at the short interest. And most people understand the short interest or how that works. But in a sense, simplified, banks and hedge funds and even private investors can drive or bet on the price of a stock falling or collapsing. And a lot of times, large institutions put a lot of money at that, and they want to ensure that those things happen. So they do they make false claims, they do all kinds of things, and it's really a dirty way of making money, but it's legal. And so a lot of people on Reddit started talking, getting together and saying, hey, have you seen the short position on some of these stocks? In some cases, they're being what's called naked shorting, where banks are literally selling short positions and they don't even own the stock. So what simply happened is people started buying these stocks. They say, look, if enough of us buy the stock, just simply buy the stock, it will rise in price, because what will happen is the volume of people wanting it will keep getting bigger and bigger. The price will go up, and they'll produce a short squeeze. And so what happened was it literally squeezed the shorts out of the market. They were forced to buy the stock to cover their position, and it literally almost led to a Lehman Brothers moment. We had that happen about 3 weeks ago. And what was scary, that people like myself understand how it works, but Wall Street showed its hand, and they literally said, you are not allowed to buy the stock. And clearinghouses said, if the third-party app companies like Robinhood, if you don't stop people from buying them right now and shut down purchases, we are going to collapse. And so Robinhood did that. They forced people to stop buying. You said you cannot buy, but you can sell, which obviously led to a liquidation event. And there were a lot of people that were quote unquote bag holders at that point. And it really shook the market. It was all over CNBC. But then something happened in silver. A few people started talking about silver. They said on these Reddit forums, hey, if you want the squeeze of a century, you need to look at silver. And there was a bunch of press recently put out that, nope, that never happened. Stay away from silver. Don't worry about it. And in the 12 years, or close to 12 years that I've been studying the precious metals markets, both paper and physical, I have never seen a time where silver popped in price. It jumped up in price a few dollars, and that led to a complete divergence of the physical price exploding and being literally hard to come by, to be able to go buy a physical coin. And what happened was you saw damage control all across CNBC, the Wall Street Journal. They saying, listen, don't worry about this. You could even watch Jim Cramer. He was even scared to say the word silver out loud in fear that the algorithms would keep building up, going, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So there's actually a whole campaign right now by even people in the silver industry that have been around, but they're sort of known for this, saying, don't worry, there's nothing to see here. This is just a glitch, or it's normal. But I guarantee you this is nothing from normal. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you've heard, but Wall Street Silver is now a new Reddit page that's taken on, I think as of last week, it already had 36,000 members, and they've started raising money to actually put billboards all across the country. And they just broke $100,000 in donations as of yesterday. And they're going to literally plaster the word silver all over the country. So to think that we're about to have a bunch of people that have woken up to what's going on, I think is an understatement. This is quite a movement that's going on.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I observed that myself. Actually, I've got a local coin dealer. Full disclosure, I own some silver. I also own some Bitcoin. I'll point that out right now. But I called my local coin dealer when all this was going on. And I said, hey, what can you do for an ounce of silver? Sorry, we don't have silver. But if we did have silver, we'd probably be looking at $35, maybe $40. But I can't come by it right now. So sorry, can't get you any silver. And meanwhile, the market's going down. And supposedly on paper, I'm supposed to be able to buy it for like 25 bucks. Like, something very, very fishy is going on here. So tell us then, who is short silver? Who is going to get squeezed here if the price of silver continues rising?
So there's actually many banks, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories around it. In full disclosure as well, I not only own silver, but I own Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And what I like to do is point out the professionals in the field, people like David Morgan that have spent tons of time researching and studying these actual positions. But really, the big culprit that we like to talk about in the silver community is J.P. Morgan. And there was a lot of issues happening just during the last presidential term where J.P. Morgan was facing RICO charges. And if anybody knows what RICO charges are, it's a pretty big deal. And they've actually already paid fines and been found guilty of spoofing the silver market. And it's a lot of people downplay it until it's too big to downplay. And that's what's funny, because that's what separates a lot of investors from speculators. And there's a lot of people that have put tons of time into this to watch what's going on. And let's put it this way. We could talk about these conspiracy theories all day. Which bank does it? How much of a short position was Lehman Brothers in prior to its collapse? But the facts are, just like we saw the other day, when silver jumped a couple dollars in price, you're now having to pay over 30% premiums just to get the coin in your hands. And you'll be lucky if you go online and you can get it within the next month. So that's the proof right there. That's what absolutely blows me away about silver.
Yeah, that is really, really fascinating. I wrote an article in the New American Magazine, I'd say probably 10 or maybe even 12 years ago at this point, on the manipulation of all the markets. And one of the ones that I really focused on was precious metals. And it was so clear, even at that time, there had been a whistleblower who had come out of J.P. Morgan and said they were selling, precious metals that they didn't even have to try to suppress the price. We've had admissions from some of the top central bankers that this is what's going on. And I guess in part, do you suppose it's to cover up what they're doing to the dollar? I mean, what's their interest in doing this?
So I was trying to show someone the other day that in the last 100 years, our currency has changed 3 times. And they go, well, no, it hasn't. It's still a piece of paper. It's green. I said, yeah, but the problem is you don't realize that if you would have known before they changed the wording on that piece of paper, and you would have positioned yourself right, like in the 30s, you would have purchased gold and watched it explode in price when they made it illegal for the common man to own it. Or when you went into Bretton Woods, or when Kennedy produced the silver certificate. And then after his assassination, sadly, that was repealed, and we watched silver explode in price. Or after Nixon took us off the gold window. Every single time, the currency has changed its words. Behind that currency, there was an asset class that exploded in value. And only 1% of the population knew it was coming, and only 1% of the population took advantage of it. Well, now we're sitting here, we want to talk about crazy conspiracy theories. We just don't even need to look further than the book The Wizard of Oz. Most people don't understand that it was originally written about, I believe it was the crime of 1873, when the Coinage Act came out and silver was demonetized. And in the book, Dorothy's slippers were silver. There was still a yellow brick road that you had to go down until you went to the land of Oz, where the Emerald City, or the color of our currency, was discovered, that it was all run by one person behind a curtain. And you know what's interesting about that is when Hanna-Barbera, when the movie studios came out, they absolutely said, no way are we going to let those slippers be in the movie. And so what they did is they said, look, this is going to be the first movie we're going to produce in Technicolor. So we're going to make them ruby because it's going to show up so much better on the camera. And that's the only thing they changed. So we want to talk about going down rabbit holes. There's plenty of them when we talk about silver.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And, we do see some big things happening in the currency. We see that the Federal Reserve has been creating massive amounts of new money during 2020 for the coronavirus. Now they're continuing this in 2021. We're about to pass this stimulus. And I think partly as a response to that, we see the prices of certain assets skyrocketing. Bitcoin, of course, is now over $50,000 per Bitcoin as we speak. 10 years ago, I was buying them for like 50 cents a coin. We've got now lumber, I just saw, is up almost 200% from spring of 2020 to today. So we see massive surges in certain things. What does this mean? We saw Elon Musk recently. We know Tesla bought some Bitcoin, and we saw him say, you know what, I'm not even a huge fan of Bitcoin, but it's less terrible than the US dollar. What's the relationship between what's going on in the dollar, what's going on in the cryptocurrency, and where is all of this headed?
Yeah, so great question. So let's run down some facts. Since coronavirus came out into the public eye around the spring, we saw the M1 money supply, which is the most liquid metric of money out there. There's M1, M2, M3, increase by 30%. Okay, so a lot of people would say we've got 30% inflation baked into the cake. What we're seeing is a collapsing value in the dollar. Now, right now in 2020, we saw at the end of 2020 about a decline around 5% in the dollar, which boosts in costs of goods more than the assets actually falling. So if you have a 5% reduction in the value of the dollar, you actually see usually more than 5% in inflation in just goods. And then it trickles down to services. Well, what all these companies are doing, like Tesla, and I want to make this very clear, there are people at the highest levels of Tesla that have owned Bitcoin for a lot longer than 6 weeks ago. So I just want to make that very clear. There's a big difference because there used to be YouTube videos you can go to and watch all the billionaires on earth say, yeah, I've been buying Bitcoin. Or you can see banks talking about they were researching it way back in 2014, 2013, right? But there's a massive difference when all of a sudden those people, the board of directors gets together and go, okay, look, we all own Bitcoin, but you know what's going to happen the second we announce the company's buying Bitcoin, especially a publicly traded company. That's a massive, massive psychological change. We've seen as early as August, when it really went mainstream, MicroStrategy's CEO, Michael Saylor, started publicly talking about that they are taking all of their US dollar treasury, all of their holdings in US dollars, converting them to Bitcoin, and they actually cited a falling dollar or a collapsing currency as the reason why they're doing this. So what's happening right now is we're seeing a huge move of institutional investors and companies that are now hedging a falling dollar because large institutions, I believe it was Citibank that came out last 3 months ago and said that they're expecting a 20% fall in the value of the dollar in 2021. That's absolutely insane. That would actually put us below 2007 levels. And so that would increase inflation like crazy. And the reason why we're seeing the Federal Reserve coming out like crazy right now is because this is damage control. So the easiest thing they can do is say drug dealers and sex traffickers and that stuff. Well, just, there's more of that going on with US dollars than there are Bitcoin because this is just ninja logic here because there's more dollars than Bitcoin. There's more people that use it. So that's what's happening is we are in straight damage control right now.
And so what do you suppose is going to happen? I saw just in the last couple of weeks, a lot of the central banks of the world have been demonizing the cryptocurrencies. We saw Janet Yellen say that it's too energy intensive to mine it and process these transactions. We've seen people making these arguments that you said that criminals are using it. So are they going to destroy it? Are they going to co-opt it? Is it a bad idea?
Oh man, it's hard not to laugh. So this is the thing. Knowledge destroys fear, right? And when we have knowledge, we know what to do in life. When we see trouble ahead, a wise man sees trouble, moves to avoid it, but a fool runs headlong into it. So let's knock out both of those. They say that central banks and governments are saying, don't do it, don't do it. The Ukraine government in November or early December inked a deal with Stellar Lumens to develop their new digital currency. All right, they're not the only ones. We saw Nigeria, I believe the other couple weeks back, start demonizing Bitcoin, and they started saying no one's allowed to own it. We've seen the same thing with India. I can almost put money on it that within 4 weeks, you're going to see hard evidence because there's lots of people studying it right now that come out and go, they're buying it. Right? We've already seen Iran, their central bank, not only start buying it, but they've actually started mining Bitcoin. Right? And then let's talk about the energy use. they talk about electricity, and it's a great hot topic right now with what we just saw with Texas, right? What could happen when you don't fix the price of something? Um, I wired $1,000 to an account a few weeks ago because I had to use the Swift system, and it was a domestic wire, and it cost me $50 portal to portal, like the entire fee, right? I could send $1,000 of Bitcoin, and it took 8 hours to get there, mind you. I could send $1,000 or $1 million in Bitcoin, and I have had to send large amounts of Bitcoin. And yeah, the transactions fees were a little bit. They cost me anywhere between $3, and I've paid as much as $50, all right, during a high network transaction fee, but it was also there within about 30 minutes. So the electricity cost is a complete joke. That is it's a horrible excuse. But the sad thing is, many people listen to someone like Janet Yellen or the head of the Fed, and they think they know everything. When in all reality, they're a salesperson that just wants to sell you a piece of paper that they printed off of a printing press.
Yeah. And I guess, to be fair, if you're using stupid solar panels and windmills to try to power an industrial economy, then maybe it is a concern. One last question for you, Travis.
Yeah.
You talked about silver, precious metals as God's money.
Yes.
I have to know, and I'm inclined to agree, but I got to know, what were you thinking when you used that term?
Yeah. So I believe in God. I know there's people that don't, and that's okay. Don't be offended that I do. And I'm not
I'm
offended that you
terribly
don't.
offended. We're going to cancel you now. No, just kidding. Please
Yeah, yeah,
proceed.
exactly. Demonetized. But no,
Right.
God invented gold and silver for a very specific reason, and it's a really neat story where he talks about in heaven, the streets are paved with gold because I have so much. I leave the most precious thing on earth for you, thinking that when you move on, you're going to have something way better, right? So that's a really cool thing. But the thing is that God knew, and civilizations all throughout history knew, and that's why our Constitution was founded on the premise of having real money, right? That in the Constitution it states that money shall be in no form other than gold or silver coin, because every fiat system has collapsed in history. And I find it very interesting that even in the Bible, when that story when Jesus drove out the money changers out of the church, remember there was fiat currency back when Jesus was on the earth. And there's actually examples of it. There's actually the actual papyrus notes in the Smithsonian. And I have a feeling, because people are there's a greater illness going along than the virus right now, and that's normalcy bias. And that's that thought that just because it's always been this way, is that it will always be that way. And I believe there's a day of reckoning coming. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, right? But I do study cycles. I got into the .com craze before it busted, and I got out of it before it busted, thank heavens. I did, lose some money, but I saw that cycle. I got into real estate before the boom. I got out before the boom, and that was great. And now we're moving into a couple of new cycles. We've already seen God's money increase in value, right? As a matter of fact, right now, to even think that silver, I could literally buy an ounce of physical silver a year ago for $15. When it was $14 spot, I could spend 35 cents over spot to buy a 1 ounce round. Now it's going to cost me $32 to buy that 1 ounce round. And like you going to your local coin store, we don't have that option anymore. We've got to go on the internet and wait. All right. So I believe that we are seeing something diverging right now. We're seeing markets crumbling around the world. And what's crazy is that people actually think, when we're talking about God's money and Satan's money, right? Everybody knows that you can't just hold up that dollar bill and say, well, it's covered in satanic signs. I mean, that's just a fact, right? To think that we are going back to normal is insanity. Just because of the simple fact that a ton of CEOs all over the world have just figured out that I don't have to now pay for rent in a building for all of my employees to go sit in. I don't have to pay for air conditioning. I don't even need as much HR people anymore. And I'm getting more work out of the fewer people. I can actually get rid of people. Those jobs aren't coming back. Robots are being put into McDonald's for a reason. You wanted your $15 an hour because you don't understand what inflation is? You're gonna get the $15 an hour, but only a couple of you will. And so when we're talking about God's money, I think there is a principle that needs to be learned, regardless how you feel about your creator or where you came from, and understand that there's only so much that comes out at any given time of the year. And even that mining has been hampered because of this virus. And there's a lag that's now been that's in place that it's going to be hard to keep up with demand.
Well, Travis, it's always fascinating. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Tell us real quick before we let you go, where can people find you? Where can people watch your awesome show, The Economic Ninja?
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube. I just started the channel about 6 months ago. It's taking off. As a matter of fact, a lot of your followers, listeners, have come onto my channel, and I'm so grateful. And I don't know everything. I tell them I'm just a 40-year-old with a brohawk, but hey, I like to try and bring it down to the most basic level possible. But yeah, right now you can follow me on YouTube at The Economic Ninja or Twitter at Economy Ninja.
Economy Ninja. Very good. Well, Mr. Economic Ninja, we sure appreciate your time. Thank you, Travis, for sharing your
Yeah.
analysis with us. Folks, these are very uncertain times economically, as you've probably noticed, and they may well be getting much more uncertain in the days to come. So it'd be, I think, a wise decision to spend a little bit of time looking into this. And in my experience, in my chats with Travis, he knows what he's talking about. He's done his research. He's a smart man. So thank you for watching. If you feel like this would be valuable for some of your friends or some of your family, please send it out to them. We sure appreciate you guys, and God bless you all.